All right, guys, I appreciate you guys having me here today. What I wanted to do was just give a practical sense of things that you guys see yourself doing every day, and that's logging into Facebook, LinkedIn, Snapchat, whatever the umpteen things that you set up IDs and passwords for that may leave yourself vulnerable. And so what I was thinking about was just develop your cyber sense. It sort of goes into a sixth sense maybe that you will have not just around campus, but around if you go to places that are new, unfamiliar, right? You have sort of a sixth sense about yourself to be aware of your surroundings, aware of where you're going. And so here we have just an example of traditional bank robberies, carjacking, personal holdups. I mean, these are the things that you see on the Channel 3 news or whatever every night. What we have today are corporate and system data breaches where you have cyber criminals, fraudsters hacking into corporate applications, or they are using those applications, getting into corporations to steal credentials to go and perform other crimes. Credit card fraud is a prime example. I mean, 20 years ago, you used to see credit card fraud where you would have the old slips. You have the paper slips and the ink copies. The clerk would throw those in the trash can. Somebody would pick those up. Now all of a sudden somebody would have your credit card, and then they could go and potentially make purchases, whatnot. Today you see these folks that have potentially stolen data, stolen your credentials, your IDs from other places, potentially going into your bank, using other information that's readily available off the internet, your social, your address, all types of personally identifiable information. And they can actually go in if these corporations have weak defenses and start creating accounts. That's actually a recent event in some large banks where folks have actually gone into folks' online banking account, created an account for a credit card, and gone and started making cash advances. Personal account takeovers, again, if you do personal banking on your laptop or your mobile phone, for example, people can actually use a man-in-the-middle attack and take over your phone and capture your login credentials if it's not protected. Ransomware, you've probably heard of some of these cases where folks, I mean, even in your personal computer or in corporations, you may get an email that says, you know, here, pay me X number of Bitcoin, and or we're going to either take over your account, or lots of times it comes in the form of an email, and you click on something, and all of a sudden it encrypts your hard drive, and the little guy on the right shows up and says, here, pay me X amount of money at this account or this address, whatever, or you won't be able to get your information. So just from an awareness perspective, and the first one up there, I'm not trying to knock on the government, but I've personally gotten the note 3 times that says your information has been stolen. You know, we offer up these credit services, but the main thing there for number 1 is just to be aware of where your information is sitting. You know, you fill out applications, you fill out all types of documentation that has your personally identifiable information on there. Just be aware of where and how these folks store these things. Access to multiple websites. Like I mentioned before, do you use the same ID and password at every site? Yeah, it's easy. But criminals, just like water, they take the path of least resistance. So if you have the same ID and password across all your sites, and on your if you use online banking or mobile banking, that just makes it easier for these guys, because chances are they may have already stolen these credentials off of a different site on one of these multiple sites. They can use those in what's called a brute force attack, when they take credentials and they just start bumping up credentials against these other sites to see what they can get into. Once they get into your account, lots of times with the other information they have, they've got keys to the kingdom. linked accounts in a bank. I mean, sometimes folks will link multiple checking accounts, savings accounts in a bank. Once these folks have a key to the kingdom, then they may have access not only to your checking account, but a second checking account, a savings account. So as you're setting up your bank accounts, try not to link everything, because that way, if something bad happens, the worst happens, they can only have access to certain accounts. Jailbreaking your phones, jailbreaking rooted phones. When you do that, you're basically disabling the inherent securities within that operating system on that device. Yes, it opens you up to multiple fun games and other things that you can do, but you're making yourself more vulnerable when you do that. When you set up Wi-Fi in your house, you can have a router, you have other devices, go and change the password on these things. Make it something that's not admin. You've heard about the Internet of Things, where you've got recently 150,000 security cameras being used to create a denial of service attack against multiple websites and other companies. Your operating system and patch versions, are they up to date or incomplete, like that sentence there? Have you changed your passwords to your financial, if you use online banking, whatever bank, whatever institution or tool you may use, change your passwords often. A lot of times these guys will steal, like at Yahoo back in September, they stole 500 million users' ID and password. And that happened almost 2 years ago. So if you hadn't changed your password, they can go in, and almost immediately after that happened, they were able to sit and they started hitting financial institutions and other things, trying to get into people's bank accounts. And then we'll talk about phishing in just a little bit. The number one thing to avoid is weak passwords. ABC 123. Yes, it's a character number combination. You guys know NCC 1701, right? It's the enterprise. Okay. So don't use easily identifiable icons or words. Everybody loves to capitalize the first word in their password or ID. I love you. You can use special characters. The one thing that the cracking routines, and that's what a lot of the hackers, they'll use cracking routines that can. They've shown that those 4 passwords up there, they can be cracked in less than a second, almost 0 seconds. It doesn't take any time at all. So misspell it, the first one there. Come up with different combinations. Capitalize letters in the middle of your password, not the beginning and the end the entire time. Mix it up with numbers, with special characters. Use combinations. One thing that I will do is that seems to work pretty well is to think of past addresses, past phone numbers, relatives' phone numbers. Something that, I don't know, a long time ago we used to remember phone numbers. Now you can just look in your iPhone, I guess. But you got to think a little bit, guys. Develop that cyber sense. Just don't make everything easy. So use combinations of phone numbers, addresses. Purposefully misspell words, because even though we have all this great information out there, it's hard to make a code script think, much less think incorrectly. So the way some of these things that make yourself susceptible to these cracking algorithms that I talked about, credential harvesting, is where folks have already stolen IDs, and then they bump those up against your financial institutions to try to steal your money. There's some good password strength little tools that you can use. You can just Google password strength and come up with it. And there's also a good article that says why they don't work, so you can read that too. But main thing is create strong passwords, change them often, because a lot of times that's the best thing that you can do to stave off these credential harvesting guys. Everybody's favorite topic these days are emails, right? So has anybody been phished before? You may or may not know it. So phishing is something where you get an email that's got a malicious link or a malicious document attached to it, where you click on the link and you may not know what's happening, but that link is basically an executable that goes off into a malicious website, and now this person, this infection, your laptop's infected, they may be able to screen scrape everything you type in to try and get usernames, passwords, bank account information, what have you. So don't click on links or attachments from people you don't know. Just don't do it, right? Don't click. I mean, even if you know somebody, if you're not expecting something, or if it's something just off the... So don't click from, even if you know someone, you get an email and you're not expecting it, maybe you text them and say, did you send me this? Somebody may be spoofing their email just to see if they can get in your laptop. Mouse over links, right? Redirects to malicious sites are another common theme. You can just mouse over a link, and if it's something that is not what it reads, it'll usually come up and say, if you're going somewhere else that's not that main site. Ransomware, don't pay. Basically, if you're keeping documents, tax returns, anything that's got a lot of your personal information on, get you a separate hard drive. Take it, detach it, save it, and detach it. If you get the little guy that comes up and says, you owe me $200 to get your information back, just sit and have your boot disk, your operating system disks there, and just re-image your machine. That's all it's going to do. I mean, then it won't be encrypted. Get your antivirus software updated to make sure that infection's not still there. You'll be good. Wrong way. All right. Concept of defense in depth. That's something that you can do at home. Basically, when you set up, again, you set up your router. Change your password, and then every so often go in and change it again. Set up firewalls. Firewalls are fairly simple to set up. Personal firewalls. You can sit and control what goes in, what comes in, what goes out. So you can tell that if you click on something and it tries to send off to these malicious sites, it'll catch that. Same thing with the antivirusware. Have something, keep it updated. That's another thing to do is keep all your software updated. On your cell phone, you get the notice, update your software, because a lot of times those are security updates that'll help you keep from getting phished. Let me look up here real quick. One thing is be vigilant. Just don't be diligent at checking your credit scores. Be vigilant at wherever you set up your accounts. Ask about their security. Ask about how they store your data. Install anti-malware. Those are big things. Keep it up to date. That's good. The other thing, real quick, USB drives. Sometimes you may even come to events like this and somebody gives you a USB stick. I personally wouldn't use it, because a lot of times these days, malware, these things are infected with malware. That you plug it in and now all of a sudden you're infected. So be aware, know where things come from, and that'll help you out. So anyway, hopefully these few tips. I know there's a class here, Electrical Engineering, Computer Science 444. It's in your data analytics curriculum. It goes into some of these, probably looks like it hits on some of these things: code cracking, web malware, email malware, some of your security configurations. So anyway, looks like a good elective to me. It'd be fun to take. Anyway, hope you guys learned something, and be safe, be aware, don't get hacked.